We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast. And I've got my good friend Stan Lambert on today. And he's an interesting character. Uh, Round and round, Stan and my mind go. Where it stops, nobody knows. Like, it's just insane. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. We've known each other for, I don't know, 25, 30 years, a long time. And we connected, what was it, maybe 2 years ago ish, and
Yeah,
hadn't seen each other in person, I don't know, maybe 20 years. I mean, long time. Hadn't talked in a while. We were in San Antonio, and I don't know, boom, all of a sudden, like, Stan was in Texas somewhere. Where is he? And Kenny and I got to go out to lunch with Stan. And I heard something from Stan that I never heard before. It was weird. And so glad we're doing the podcast. We'll definitely get this because, like, people think I'm strange. They don't know the half of it. They have no idea how strange I really am. And so, you know, uh, Christians are funny people. They're just funny. And so, Jesus said, you know, you'll do greater things than I do. What in the world does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And it says, it's always funny to me, interesting, sad, some type of feeling or emotion where people say, well, Christians say, well, you can't do that, Mark. And I'm like, but the Bible says all things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. I mean, like, so I get confused. My social autism is significant, and when I'm around Stan, it might trigger my social autism to kick in even more. And so we're sitting down for lunch, and Stan says, something to the effect of, I don't know if you knew this, Mark, but you know, um, you healed me. Like, Stan is legally blind, like it's like he's blind, and he says you healed me, and I'm like, now that's something that doesn't happen every day. like somebody says you healed me from blindness, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that. So how do you do a miracle? And I wasn't even there, and I wasn't even present. So when Jesus healed the blind, like, he was there. Like, I don't know. It just it's just strange. And so that's the kind of friendship that Stan and I have had over the years. Many years ago, yeah, it would have been 22 years ago ish. I'm telling everybody about this cool new natural law that I've discovered. The secret about time, the 3-for-1 principle, and how you can get 3 hours back for every hour. And nobody understands this. Like, of the 500 plus natural laws, they all kind of make sense where you're like, well, that makes sense. Like, okay, that makes sense. But there's one of the laws that doesn't make sense. And that's, how do you get 3 hours back for every hour? And I explained it to Stan, and Stan's like, oh, I get that. I'm like, you do? He's like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Um, it's like Chuck Yeager. You're familiar with his story. I'm like, well, I know he's the first human being that broke the sound barrier, but yeah, I don't know. He says, yeah, he said there were other people, and so Stan's, background is, in the Air Force, and a pilot, fighter pilot, and so um, and so Stan went ahead and said, he's like, yeah, well, Chuck Yeager's not the first one that could have broke the sound barrier. There are other people that could have broke it, but as soon as he got close to Mach 1, the plane started shaking. And I'm like, okay. And so they all naturally thought, naturally thought, well, like, once we break sound barrier, if it's shaking this much, we're going to disintegrate. So Chuck Yeager is the first human being, not the first one that could have broke the sound barrier. He's the first one that trusted the integrity of the system, which is a concept from Tom Coons, who's the most recent past president of Century 21, largest real estate franchise in the world. And so Tom says, trust the integrity of the system. Before Tom went ahead and shared that, I thought of people having integrity, but never systems. But systems have integrity too. And so, like, he says, you went ahead and broke the sound barrier as it relates to time. And I'm like, dang, that's cool. Like, wow. So it's weird where he revealed one of the most significant things, and now there's the 30-day challenge. If you haven't been through that, you definitely want to go through it. And Stan, um, four of my granddaughters went through that. There were twin girls that were Ginger Ann's girls that went through the 30-day challenge, and then there were so that was JoJo and Allie. And then Elena and Micaiah went through, and they were 3 and 4 years old. 30-day challenge. So every day they watched a 10-minute video. So every day they watched a 10-minute video. And then they went ahead and they went ahead and they listened to it. And then they told their mom, three things. They told their moms three things. So Ginger Ann, the one with the twins, and then Melissa is the one that has the 3 and 4 year old. And I'm telling you, Stan, those little girls, they were precious on what they said. So they had to say three things. Like after you watch the video, you go ahead and so the videos average 6 minutes in length. So this one's 14 minutes, but this one here is 3 minutes. And so the average is, this one's 7 minutes. So but the average is 6 minutes each for the 10 videos. And so they would watch it, and then they would tell their mom, what did I learn? What action I'm going to take from what I learned? And what do I need to learn next? And what's interesting is Katie went ahead and she started the 30-day challenge, but she dropped off. And it's funny because I said, I was at Coffee Connections. If you're listening to this, you don't have a coffee connection, start a coffee connection. There's one on Thursday that's virtually that you can join. And so that one is at 6:30 Eastern time. And you just go to www.ravingfan, RAVING, ravingfan.net. And I'm telling you, those coffee connections, I've been doing them for, I don't know, 20 years. And they are just absolutely amazing. They're life-changing. So there's one on Thursday that's a virtual one for a half an hour. And so you can join that and learn how to start one locally. But those are a lot of fun. But I was, at one yesterday, and Katie and I said, you're a bad influence. And she's a sweet girl, sweet, like she's fun. She's so cute. And I said, you're a bad influence on my granddaughters. So she works with my son-in-law who owns an accounting firm. And so she gets to see the girls. And I said, you're a bad influence. She says, no, they're a good influence on me. I'm learning from them. But, Patrick, he's a friend of mine. And he went ahead and bailed out too. The twins got him to go on. And then Norman, he's the uncle of McKay and Elena, and that poor guy, he dropped out too. Like poor guy didn't have the stamina, that a 3 and 4 year. But those girls, they'd they'd forget about it. And then mom's tucking them into bed, and they're like poor Elena, she's like, Mommy, I'm so tired. I don't know what Grandpa said. I don't know what he said. I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. Like, it was just so precious to see them go through each of these different videos of natural laws. And when we understand and internalize these videos, then we go ahead and we learn the secret about time, which gives us, like an infinite amount of time. It's absolutely crazy how these 10 natural laws go ahead change the way we think about time, which is really what gives us the secret about time. And so it's it's really it's really cool. It's really cool. And so Stan was an instrumental part in me understanding. And he says, so then he said, do you know what happens once you hit Mach 1? I said, I don't. He says, it actually takes less fuel because you see the pictures where that white clouds around them. I'm like, yeah. He said, you're going so fast that the resistance isn't at the tip of the plane, it's towards the back of the plane. So you can actually go faster and use less fuel. And he says, that's what you've done with time. And so when our lives start shaking, like they did this weekend for me, when they start shaking, most of us want to go ahead and bail out. Like most of us want to back away because we're like, our lives are going to disintegrate spiritually, our families, our children, our wife, like our marriages, like everything's going to disintegrate. Um, so my mind is kind of all over the place today, Stan. Yesterday's coffee connection was just kind of wonky. And so, do you have thoughts, Stan?
I would just say if anyone is still wondering about the Mach 1 principle, the idea is before from 0.95 Mach to Mach 10 is called trans Mach, or there's a bunch of different names for it, but essentially, the closer you get to uh, that area you talked about, it starts bunching up in front of the airplane because you're pushing it. You're pushing it in front of you like a bow wave on a little boat. You've been out on a motorboat or something, you see the bow wave in front of you. Well, when you're in the air, you're doing the same thing. You just can't see the air, but you're pushing it, and it becomes more and more compressed, and so it takes a lot of power. But when you push through it, that's actually triggers the sonic boom. Um, and I don't know the physics behind that, but I just know that's what triggers the sonic boom. I know that's when it moves aft of the leading edge of your aircraft. So you essentially push through what was holding you back. And once you punch through, suddenly uh, things operate completely different. Everything every pilot has learned, not every pilot, I suppose, but what most pilots know about flying, or what you learn in school, the basics about the lift equation and all that, everything changes. When you're flying Mach 1, you don't have lift and and gravity. You're not developing lift with your wings. You're actually balancing shock waves, and so it's amazing because a Mach plus speed really requires a different configuration than a regular airplane because they fly with different rules. So that's why we tore up so many airplanes. I mean, literally, so many just fell apart approaching Mach 1 because they weren't designed to go Mach 1, and they couldn't handle the stress. Um, but our engineers obviously figured it out, and today the transition is seamless. Even when I flew Mach in the 38s back in '85 or '84, it was seamless then. You can't really feel it in the airplane, but you're just using a whole different set of rules. And that's kind of my point with the time or the Mach principle. I use it anytime I say you push through to where you're almost forced by the nature of what's around you that, okay, to handle this, we have to go with a whole different set of rules and a whole different way of approaching this. And you're forced to do it. And by
So
being
this is
forced
what,
to do it, you do
real
it.
quick, let me explain to people because they might not be tracking at the end. So
Okay.
this is what we call this the next dimension principle. So what's a higher number, a two or a nine? Most people will think a nine is because we think in one dimension. But if there's 10 levels in a dimension, 10 is not perfection, 10 is masteries. Once we get to a 10 in a dimension, we move to the next dimension. And so a two in the next dimension actually is higher than the nine in the previous dimension. This stuff is cool, funky stuff because it explains all kinds of things in life. It's not just flying, it's not just business, it's life. Like when my oldest son, Jonathan, and my second oldest daughter, Melissa, when they moved out of the house, they wanted to share all of their successes with me. And it was weird because when they were teenagers in the house, they barely talked to me, which I'm not complaining about. Like, but then they want it, and I'm thinking, I, like when my daughter Melissa, bless her heart, she's like, Dad, I'm doing four jobs. You should be proud of me. And I'm like, don't say it, Mark. Don't say it. Don't go ahead. How many hours are each of those? Don't just praise her. And I did. I followed my instinct, but I didn't understand the science behind it. So when we make a breakthrough to a new dimension, we need a cheerleader coach, somebody who's going to tell us, like toddlers when they trip and fall, when they trip and fall, um, nobody tells them you'll never walk again in your life. You're a loser. Like they don't. But as adults, nobody encourages us. Nobody encourages to make mistakes and learn, and like they don't. And so we stop learning often as adults. And once we move to a new dimension, like dimensions are going from teenager to being an adult, or from a child to a teenager to an adult, and in that transition time it's tricky. And then when you go ahead and get married, that changes. That's a new dimension. When you have kids, that's a new dimension. When they become teenagers, that's a new dimension. When they become adults, that's a new dimension. So we're going through all these new dimensions, and these are painful. Like right now I feel I'm 61 years old, and I feel like I'm a teenage girl going through puberty. And all the women are like, "Ooh, that's a terrible place to be." I'm like, "No kidding." Not only for the girls, but for the dads of the girls going through puberty. And so the next thing you got to do is you got to understand, like Stan just said, there's new rules. Like there's not all new rules, but there's a lot of new rules. And if you don't understand these new rules, well, you're going to get stuck in the dimension, or you're going to crash. And then the next level is so the teacher is, so the cheerleader is an encourager. That's my wife. That is not the gift I have been given. I am not the best encourager. I'm just not. Teacher, I'm really good at that. Like a teacher, I can explain the science behind things. So I'm really good at level two, not so good at level one. Level three is the coach. I'm not so good at that. This is the one that's kind of bipolar. Like a football coach, they'll bench you, and then if you're even the best player because you're mouthing off, like they'll somehow get the most out of it. This is the expressive personality. So the cheerleader is the amiable, the teacher is the analytic, the coach is the expressive. That's the weakest I have. It's like, but then I'm really good. Probably the best is I'm good with Navy SEALs. So this is where, you know, you'll never hear a Navy SEAL say, well, nobody's perfect. You'll never hear that. They don't think like, or top gymnasts. They'll never say nobody's perfect. They don't allow that to enter into their world. Well, everybody makes mistakes. Top people, top people, they they just don't allow that thought to enter in because they know if you think nobody's perfect, you're going to make a lot more mistakes and you'll never win. You'll never get a gold medal. Now, when we look at this, and so this is cheerleader. So this is Elena. She was so cute when she was little. Oh my gracious, she's a fireball now. As Kenny. Wow. This is Micaiah. She's now 4. she's a she's a cutie. She's a cutie. But she's a sneaky little bugger. And then this is the twins when they were 3. Now there's seven. Oh my gracious. Wow, they're a handful. They were a handful when they were three. A lot of trauma that grandpa had going through when they were three. And so, and then this is Daniel and Trevor who are 12 and 10 now. Yepper, they're fun, they're interesting. Like they're getting to be. So we have in seasons in life that we're going through. And so then we go into there's this transition that Stan was talking about. So when we go from one dimension to another, so this is what's called a fractal right up here. And so we have these different things. So we have different dimensions in different areas of life. And when we get to the top of a dimension, there's a gap between the dimension we're in right now and the new dimension we're going into. And so you can't really see it, but it's there nonetheless. And so that's called the dimensional gap. So get through a dimensional gap, like our lives are pretty comfortable. Like, life's good and everything's good. So why would I go ahead and make a dimensional jump? Most people don't actually. Most people don't make a dimensional jump, which is sad because this is not going to go well for them. It's just not. So, what moves us, what motivates our life vision? And so, what helps us to move forward is faith, see, understand, do, humility, great stewardship, contentment, self discipline, perspective, and a strong life vision. What holds us back is fear. We do not see, we lack understanding, do not do, pride, poor stewardship, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, low morale, lukewarm. So, these are things that move us forward or break us back. Now, this is all building up. This is all building up to here is the fractal. Here's simple to complex to simple again. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff there that's really cool. But here is where it gets interesting. And I don't know if Stan might be able to help us today. I've been looking for this for over 20 years. So what this is we're the red, so we're going to be, so this, the red dot is where we're at right now. Okay, so that's where we're at in whichever dimension we're in. And so you have dimensions marriage and spiritual and with children and relational and health wise and moral, so you have all these dimensions. Okay. So this is me. This is where we're at right now. This right here is what's called the sweet spot. This is where it feels good. So this is when somebody says, when you ask somebody a question and they say, this is the science behind sales, being great in sales. And so, or anything, like when you go ahead and say to somebody, ask somebody a question and they say, that's a great question. You've hit a sweet spot. So they're curious about it. They're interesting. Like nobody says that's a great question intentionally. It's that you've challenged their mind, you're stretching them, and they like you, they're drawn to you. And so this is where people are looking for answers. And so I hang out with a lot of young people in their 20s, like a lot of them, men, guys and gals. And I know where they're at. Like if they're married, the guy's really confused. He thought it was going to be good, and sometimes it is better than he thought. Other times, man, it's brutal. Or others that are looking to get married, and so all of the different things, and so they're looking for answers. This here is the hard zone. So this is the hard zone, and this is where the 9Ds kick in. When people hit hard zone, the 9Ds are instinctive. So they distract, defy, defer, deflect, defend, defensive, deny, destroy, deceive, disguise equals defeat and depression. This is the hard zone. This is not a zone that normal people choose to go into. But life will take us there. And when it does, what do we do with it? And then this zone here is life zone. It's outside of the hard zone. Like it's like I am not going to survive this. That's where life often takes us, you know? And so this is the blackout zone. This is like hitting the runner's wall. or when your body is hitting speeds that your body wasn't intentionally to hit. Like it's like, so we get stuck. We feel like quitting and giving up and not making it through the breakthrough when the 9 Ds of destruction kick in. Because people either say things that we do not want to hear or may ask questions we don't like to be asked. So this is, this is where the blackout zone is. This is the dimensional gap. This is where we have fear. And men don't even realize it or won't acknowledge it. We like it where we're at. We feel safe. We feel good. We feel in control. We feel like we're having fun, but there's something missing. And so then what we do is when we look at this, the emotions kick in: fear, overwhelm, locked, intimidation, intimidated, hurt, anger. There's a whole bunch of different emotions, hundreds of different types of emotions. And then we black out. And when we black out, like when we get defensive, all learning stops. So my grandfather, he gave me the answer when I was 8 years old to not blacking out. And I don't remember what I did. I was probably like my grandsons when, I was 8 and thought I knew everything. And my grandfather probably corrected me and said, he laughed and he said, Mark, he said, when somebody tells you something, there's some amount of truth. It could be 1% to 99%. It's not up to them to decide what truth there is. It's up to you. So what he did at the age of 8, and then he died when I was 9. I probably only saw him 5 times in my life. But I think back and I think, what if I wouldn't have been paying attention? My whole life would have been different, because when we become defensive and or we explain ourselves, like explain why we are the way we are, or we defend our position, we don't learn, we don't grow, we get stuck in where we're at. And so this is why blacking out is not healthy. But relationships are going to be hurt. We will stop growing. We will live in the world, in the habit world. Our physical health will be affected. Our mental health will be affected. We'll become an RZV, robot, zombie, vampire, or addict. And so there's a new white paper that I'm working on right now, and it's crazy. It's addicted to lazy. You should get that. Like, it's crazy. So, so it's like in the military, in special ops, like Tom Kuntz was, an Army Ranger. And when you're flying, when you're in the Air Force and you're flying Mach 1, 2, 3, whatever they're up to now, like it's a different world. You think in a different way. Like I think it was Ralph Miller, another one of my mentors, and he was in the Air Force. And he went ahead and after he got out of Air Force, started his own company and sold it when he was in his early 50s. And and I don't know if he told me this or Stan told me this, but they had a saying about, you know, proud, pilots. And pilots, if you look at Top Gun, they're a pretty proud group of people. Like, but I don't know if Top Gun's real. Like, I don't know if it's probably got some things that are similar, but they're probably a pretty confident group of people. But overconfidence, I think it was, but Stan can correct me if it was him. He's probably familiar with it. But I think it was Ralph that said to me, he said, Mark, when a pilot was arrogant and proud, he says, we called that a smoking hole in the ground.
Yeah, I didn't say it, but yeah, that's true.
And so this stuff here is intriguing to me because it has applications to my marriage, it has applications to my 7 kids and my 10 grandkids, and it's like I wish I would have known all of this. I wish somebody would have like taught me this. you know like I'm thinking, I went to church 3 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday every week for 40 years. And then a lot of in between things. And I'm like, why didn't they teach me this? Like I so it's interesting when Stan and I get together, there can be just silence and it's okay. Like he's processing, I'm processing, our synapses in our brain are like we get into flow. And I become like a 3-year-old kid, and I think Stan does too, and Tom Coons does. Like it's like we revert back down to our 3-year-old selves, and we say, "This is just cool." Like we show each other the toys and say, "What are you learning? What are you seeing? And what's going on in your mind? And what are you experiencing? And how does this all connect to like everything?"
That's it, because it first of all, this is the I can't think of the right word, part of me that wants to say, if anyone's looking at the video, I had a 5 minute warning, so you're seeing me as I look when I get up, but because of my back, I have to spend most of my time in bed anyway, so that's why I'm not dressed up and looking nice. But when you're talking about failing and losing and pilots, I know the common thing is, look, everybody fails, blah, 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 on and on. And as pilots, you accept that in certain parts of your life. But in certain parts of flying, you don't. You say, no, mistakes are not acceptable.
See,
You
and
don't make
I
mistakes.
apologize. Like you triggered something there for me. Like somebody a few years ago said, Mark, it's like juggling balls. And there's some in life as a dad, there's rubber balls and then there's glass balls. Like, why didn't anybody teach me that? And so there's like a rubber ball, you can drop the ball, you can make mistakes and then bounce back. But then there's glass balls and you don't get a second chance. You just, you don't get a second chance. Like,
And so you don't give yourself that chance. You essentially
well,
say, I can't make a mistake. So you just make sure you don't make a mistake. And that's a level that most people don't understand that they can hold themselves to. But that takes me into a whole different thing I've been thinking about and making notes about, that I'm considering pursuing and maybe writing some on, is a topic called learning by losing. Because as I kind of mentioned a while back in something we were on, uh, I think it was you and I, but the concept was, it doesn't matter how someone tells you something. If I say, Mark, I despise you, you are this, and you disgust me. Well, that's not really very nice. And I don't like to talk to people that way. But I'm sorry, Mark, you're still responsible for any truth that's in that. And I learned early on to be responsible for the truth that comes through. In fact, I'm a little bit like Mark, and I'm almost a masochistic. That's not the right word. Masochistic in exposing myself to that, because I want to learn. Sometimes I want people to be mad enough at me that they will yell at me, because they will finally say what they mean. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I understand where you're coming from. It would have been easier if you just told me that, but now I get it. Now I'm understanding. Um,
hey, this is
and
so true. Like my international speaking coach, Linda Breakall, I'm 20, what am I, 27 years old? And and I don't like to speak. I'm not good at speaking. I don't like to write, but I need to because that's part of what I need to do to achieve what God created me to be. And I go through a 3-day boot camp. And at the end of the first day, she comes up to me and she says, Mark, I have to be honest with you. I said, oh, I love honesty. And she says, you are the most god awful speaker I have ever heard in my life. And I said, that is so cool, Linda. That is so great. Like, I have no place to go but up. And she just looks at me and she's like, you're just strange. You're a masochist. You love pain. Well, I don't love pain. I just love what pain produces.
There you go.
And that's what Stan is saying. So we're gonna cut this podcast off. We could go all day. Like Stan and I, it's crazy on this. And I'm so thankful that we did this podcast because this one's just it's so there's so much in it. Like you might black out. You might need to go through it two, three, four times, share it with a couple other people. Like who else in your life? Like when we're getting close to blacking out, when our life is shaking, like I'm not saying you always push through. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that trust the integrity of the system. Like I'm saying that, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Well, what does that mean? I don't know, but there's so much in this. And so share this with two other people. Don't make the decision for them. Don't say, well, they're going to think I'm weird. Who cares? They probably already do. And it's fine. It's a good thing to be weird. Don't go ahead and say, well, they're so stupid they wouldn't understand it. Don't make that decision for them. They might be a lot smarter. They might actually be smarter than you are. You might think you're smarter, but they might be smarter. They might resonate with this. So share this with two other people. It's a short podcast. You go through it and say, like, what is this? What does this trigger inside of you? What does this awaken inside of you? And so I look forward to doing many more podcasts with Stan. This has been just absolutely wonderful. Do you have any questions on anything we covered today? Connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session. Or you can call toll free 888-230-2300. Outside the U.S., 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.